Hi, it's John Neal here again. Today I'm going to talk about nature. Yesterday I talked in somewhat simplistic terms about housing being built on land and farms and their fields being very barren really because they just had one crop on them, and housing estates could be better places for wildlife than just regular farmland. Well, of course, if you're going to cut down hedges and trees and woods and so on, and then build houses and concrete and roads, that's not a good thing. And that does happen as well. So, but with a bit of thought, I think we can create better places for wildlife. Oh, by the way, I'm outside in Jasmine Corner again. And the weather's turned a bit, so if it does, I'm ready for it, but we're okay at the minute. I think it's eased off. So let's put that down. I've always liked wildlife. When I was a kid, I was in the Young Ornithologists Club, which was a junior version of the RSPB, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. And they've expanded their remit somewhat, and the magazine is now called Nature's Home. I showed you a double-page spread of the inside of a few months back, and there's an interesting article here. An article by Simon Barnes, who's a well-known writer on nature, and he was saying that with this pandemic, people have noticed nature more. There's been fewer cars on the roads, and we've heard the bird song better. And he says this about nature, and I totally agree with this. Let me read it to you. He says, we can accept that nature isn't just a bonus, an add-on, something that's nice to have around at weekends. We can now see as the necessity it is, necessary not just for our health and sanity, but also because the future of the world depends upon it. Very good. I'm all for that. When I was a kid, teenager, I used to go badger watching, which is wonderful. I mean, I'd never done these things before. And when you realise that badgers were there to be watched in the dusk as night approached, it was fantastic. The very first thing that caught my eye were bats. I didn't know bats existed. And I just lived in North Coventry, suburban area, and I saw bats flying around the houses. I thought, wow. And that led me on to interest in birds and so on. And I was just engrossed. I had some friends who had somewhat similar interests. But I'll tell you one little story. We were out cycling once, and there was a kestrel flying in a field, and we'd sort of stopped, and I said, oh quick, let's stop, have a look at this. I think there's about 4 of us together. So I stopped and leaned on this gate and was just watching this kestrel, completely engrossed in it. And after a couple of minutes, I turned and said to my mates, oh look at that. And I looked, and they'd all gone. They'd all pushed off. They'd left me there as a bit of a joke because I was so engrossed in it, and they'd realised that. So they just disappeared. Well, I love it. And another occasion, we were mountaineering in Scotland on the island of Rum. This is a teenager from school. And we were just climbing to the highest point on Rum, one of the mountains there. And I was ahead of everyone, and I got to the top just at the point where there was a golden eagle sat on the summit. And as I approached, it flew off. It was quite magical. And when I got to the summit area, there was actually a huge feather this long, which I kept. It must have been one of its sort of secondary wing feathers. Absolutely fantastic. So I've always enjoyed nature, wildlife, birds, animals. I get great solace from knowing that they're there and trying to support them. And in the garden here, I've got a wild area down the bottom. That's a good excuse for just leaving it be. And I feed the birds regularly too. So I'm wondering what we could do with the countryside and make it more friendly for wildlife. We have wildlife areas, for instance. We've got Hartshill Hayes, which is a country park 300 acres of woodland, and there are other places similar. In fact, near Coventry, there are some what were gravel pits and sand excavations, which dug out quite large areas that got filled with water. So they've been now restored and made out to be wildlife areas for birds that enjoy being by the water. So it is possible with a bit of thought, and it's not just as it says, as Simon Barnes says there, it's not just a matter of, oh, that's nice, it's vitally important. And of course this whole argument then stretches through to the environment, climate change, deforestation, and flooding as well. Flooding is a big issue in this country, and sometimes the finger is pointed at the way we've managed the land and mismanaged the land basically, and allowed the water to run far too quickly with devastating effects down below. So yeah, if you've got any comments on wildlife, climate change, land management, I think so fascinating stuff, and maybe this pandemic has caused us to have a second think about the way we deal with things. What do you think? What do you think? Go on, tell me what you think. Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye.